Okay, everyone, welcome to another show. This is Rufus Opus. I'm happy to see y'all here tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about some kind of sensitive topics. I need to give you a trigger warning up front. We'll be talking about consent agreements and a very specific instance of allegations of rape within our occult community that have since been retracted. I'm going to talk about some very fundamental things that I think people should think about when they are discussing power dynamics in their relationship. I don't have a ton of experience in this, so I asked Stian Calliston to have this conversation with me because he has 25 years of experience in both the occult and the kink communities. I'm mostly vanilla throughout my life. I've only had limited and amateurish experience with kink at the most extreme. So I had feelings about this whole situation, but I wanted to talk to someone who knows a lot more about this kind of thing than I do. I am very opinionated and self-righteous enough as it is, and I didn't want to kink shame people who were having a good time. But there were so many things about this that were off that I wanted to get the perspective of someone who understands how to do this kind of thing in safe ways. And also, give me a chance to vent and kind of do it in a way that is beneficial to myself and others. I would hope. I strongly believe that what consenting adults do in the privacy of their own homes is their own business. But unfortunately, there really are predators out there who really do use their experience in both the occult world and the kink community, the kink background, whatever that is called, to really abuse people and really harm people. There are predators that hide behind kink to do their predations, and in the occult community it's not that different. So we talk about some of the things we've experienced, and he provides a really good framework and some excellent advice, in my opinion, on how to stay safe when you're getting involved with all this stuff. So I wanted to put this out there for people who are kind of new to the situation, new to the scene, not very experienced in it, who have a lot of ideas that they've read about but don't necessarily understand and practice, and it's mostly a way to kind of help with harm reduction, because the whole situation hurt everybody involved, including people who we talk about it in the show. So we'll let the rest of it stand on its own. You guys, I hope you enjoy it. Have a good night. Okay. Hi, welcome. Appreciate you joining me. For the audience's purposes, I am Rufus Opus, and we've got Stian Calliston. How do you say your last name? I've never...
Calliston.
Calliston. Yeah, I've never said it out loud before. I've read it for years, but never actually heard it said. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate you joining us for this. I wanted to bring you on because recently in the occult community we had some issues around consent that came up. It was a friend of mine years ago was accused of raping someone, and I thought, that guy would never do that. He's a good friend of mine. And as we found out more and more about it, it turned out that I asked him straight up, did you do it? And he's like, he wouldn't deny it. And he's like, well, it's complicated. It was in a relationship. It was complicated, but he wouldn't actually say he didn't do it. And I was like, what the fuck, and later on I found out that they were in a kink BDSM relationship where they had negotiated an agreement to where if he wanted to, he could just take her whenever he wanted, and even if she said no, it was still considered okay for him to do that as part of a test of her will or her boundaries of her wills and all that stuff. And it was gross to me, and I figured I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't understand it. And in my opinion, no matter what, he should have not done that. Like if you offered a chance to get into that kind of relationship, with don't, like say, hey, look, I appreciate where you're at with everything, but no. And then if he does do it, like I could see like getting into a relationship like that to protect someone. Because like obviously if somebody's saying I don't want to give up my consent, that's a big red flag, right? And it's like, why would you want to do that? So like I could see like maybe protecting someone in that situation, like, you know, if you want to agree to that, that's fine, but I would never do that, right? But it's like then he did it anyway, and it's like what the fuck, you know? And the whole thing, even if she agreed to it and consented to it, the whole thing stank to me, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. And recently she's come out and said that she was not raped because of this agreement that they had in place, that he could do whatever he wanted to against her consent. So, I mean, according to their agreement, it technically might not have been rape, but it was still against her no. She said no, and he took advantage of the relationship. I thought that was just terrible. So that's like my understanding of the whole situation, and I judge the guy harshly for that. I think he's a piece of shit. I think he never should have done that. He never should have been in that situation in the first place. And personally, I was offended because he was supposed to be a gent for Jupiter, right? We had started this cult and we were trying to be like honorable people and set the world to rights. And here he is getting into this situation. And I was so disgusted. I was so disgusted, you know, and he reached out to me afterwards and tried to like clarify and everything. And I'm like, dude, whatever, you're messed up. And I don't want to deal with that. But I did want to talk to you about it because you have 25 years of experience in polyamorous relationships. You're active in the Seattle. I don't know how active you are, but you're part of the Seattle kink community. And
Yep. Yeah, like my magical career and my kink career, so to speak, pretty much span the same time span. I got into kink a couple of years after I started doing magic. Been polyamorous for a long time. Been doing a lot of, shall we say, untraditional relationship models and various kink dynamics for a long time. And you know, from my perspective, there's no way to legally give up your right to consent.
absolutely,
And I'm
yeah,
gonna say there's no way to do it ethically.
there
Like
isn't.
having that, like having a situation where you are not allowed to say no in some form. That is a huge red flag. That is not what I would consider in any way an ethical, safe, or in like sane kink agreement.
Right,
You can have, you know, agreements that, oh, if I say no, please keep going, but there's a safe word. There's
right.
always an out. There's always a clause.
Mm-hmm.
And now I will say I do not know either of the people involved,
Right.
except by reputation and having read some material. But my understanding is he had a lot, he was considerably older, had a lot more experience, both magically and kink wise. And the responsibility falls a lot on him. Like, I would like, even if somebody came up to me and said, like, I want to give total control to you. I do not want to have the option to say no or safe word. At that point, I go, absolutely not.
Yeah, because
Yeah, that is. It's also a red flag for from the person asking it, because I get that people have that fantasy. It is a common fantasy. You read, you know, a lot of classic or not so classic BDSM literature like Story of O, or even, you know, 50 Shades of Grey. And people, I get the allure, surrendering total control to someone.
yeah, non-consent is like the
Yeah.
most popular thing on literotica. It's the most
Yeah,
popular genre, but it's fantasies of control and fantasies of non-consent.
exactly. It's you can put it into play for a scene. Like you can have, you know, give the illusion of that, but still have, the emergency brake.
Mhm.
Because here's the thing, giving up that level of control, like trying to do that as part of a 24/7 always on dynamic, it's gonna turn bad. Like,
Right.
I've seen people do that before, and it always ends with a whole mess of trauma. It ends with really bad shit happening, because
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're an ethical dom or top master, whatever you want to call yourself, you're not going to want that.
I can't imagine like anybody
Yeah.
wants the legal, just the legal repercussions, the legal
Right.
liability of that. I mean, taking that risk, I guess, could also be a kink. Like, oh, I might go to jail for this. Woo.
You
You
know,
know?
when you mix it in with magic,
Yeah.
especially, like, you get that added dimension that is extra dangerous, because you have this magical mentorship, and like, it's intense stuff. Like, you can get all sorts of, I don't know, ideas, insights, deep thoughts that come up that you put a lot of meaning into, but it's really just classical forms of abuse, and like surrendering your control to an outside entity, and or and you think that they are, powerful and wise, and that they're going to do it for your own benefit. No,
Right.
no, that's
Yeah. And see, that's
yeah.
something about their relationship. Like in this particular instance, the dynamic of their relationship to me, like I thought the guy was like a mentor kind of person. Like I thought he was ahead of the game and was on top of his shit and was sort of illuminated a little bit enlightened, and would know better than to take advantage of something like that, and was actually in a position where he was guiding and guarding people. Like that was the persona he was projecting at the time as part of the Gents for Jupiter. He was taking control of the world and setting it to rights, and that was what we were all trying to do. It was like honorable, and I think that part of, like, for me personally, the reason I was so upset about it is because he betrayed that. He betrayed every human on the planet that we were trying to fucking save, right, by taking advantage of that situation with that one human being.
And
Like,
yeah, that's another risky thing. On the
yeah.
other side with magic, like, you get into this
Meg,
headspace that you've got it figured out.
yeah.
You are in control. You can help all these people, raise them up to your level. And you get totally, like, become totally blind to your own unresolved shit.
Right, and you end up projecting
Yeah.
that onto them and taking out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen it. We've seen it a million times, right? And I don't know. So what is a healthy? How would somebody? So, like, in the occult community, I think there's a lot of overlap with kink, and I think that a lot of people who are noobs in the occult and noobs in general in the kink community are definitely targeted by predators. And I know that, like, I came from the OTO. It's great for people who like it, but it's also got its issues, and a lot of its issues are predators. And it's because it's a solar phallic sex cult, and sex cults attract predators. It's shocking.
Yeah, no, I mean, I left the OTO in 2009 because of problems like that I was seeing.
Mhm.
I've seen that in a lot of other magical organizations that rely a lot on hierarchy,
Yeah,
and
secrets.
yep,
Yeah, and the thing, and in invitational degrees, right? I mean, the whole thing is geared to put power outside of the person who's clutching towards it, right? And
right.
it's cool. I mean, I get that that has a value. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that per se. And too many of my friends get a lot out of the OTO for me to give them a bunch of crap about the whole, like, how evil I think it is, and personally, just based on my
Mhm.
experiences. But they have good experiences. So, and I kind of engineered my own downfall. So I'm not gonna take that out on the organization as a whole. But I do think it's full of predators. Or not
What I've
full, but
what I've
several.
seen a lot, for instance, that really bothers me with a lot of these organizations that have, and I've been a member of my fair share. I've been a member of a lot of things. I'm not anymore. I am not a member of any lodge, group, order, tradition, or anything. Um, but one of the things that really bugged me is you're in an initiation. You've just, gone through this very dramatic thing, often blindfolded. Sometimes there's swords and, scary things, and you're in this really weird headspace. And then you start swearing an oath that is fed to you a few words at a time.
You don't know what you're swearing to. That's part of the
And
fun.
and they start including loyalty oaths to the leadership of the group, which I find incredibly problematic.
Yeah, it's distasteful.
Yeah, there's no real consent there either. I will say this: the last group I was active in, which was a one of the many modern versions of the Golden Dawn, the open source order of the
Oh,
Golden Dawn.
yeah, Sam Webster.
Yeah, I will say this, and I will give kudos. You were required to read the oath you'd be swearing before you could actually have your ritual.
That's good. I read every oath that I was supposed to swear on the OTO before I got there. I was not going into any of that shit blind personally.
Yeah.
It's all published.
No, but
so
it's a very good thing to make standard. And
yeah,
yes, like you can get the OTO oaths, they're not impossible to find.
right. But it's
But
the idea that it's
you're
supposed
not
to be a
supposed
secret.
to. Yeah, you're not supposed to have read them.
Right. And of course, people who do are considered not really into it, and the people who don't are just kind of, you got to wonder about them, like why don't you have that self-preservation that makes me question this stuff before I get into
Why
it.
do you want members who are willing to jump into something and make an oath that is entirely benefiting your group and not them?
Right. And
without
okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too into like tearing apart the OTO. The local body here, the new body master is a good friend of mine, and I do think that at Horizon Lodge, I do think that everybody's going to be pretty safe because the leadership is on top of that shit, and they are not letting anybody slide. And that's typical across the OTO, fairly typical in the U.S. But there are so many exceptions to the rule that it's just I hesitate to encourage people to join, but at the same time, I know a lot of people who aren't getting hurt. So
yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. Like, it is, to me, deeply problematic from a consent point of view. And that doesn't mean everyone will be hurt, doesn't mean everybody will be traumatized by it.
right.
But it creates an opportunity for it
for people to be taken advantage of,
that predatory people can exploit.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something actually when I was talking to you about doing this interview, one of the things that you brought up that I thought was that was key about all this is like predators will use things like kink, and I'm sure the occult as well, to hide their, they hide behind kink, but they're just predators.
The number of like guys I've seen is like, no, I'm not a misogynistic abuser. These are just our kink dynamics. And
in their private life, they also hate women.
Yeah, no, like
it's like, I guess hating women is just your hobby then. Wait.
It's kink needs to be approached really as a partnership where outside of specific agreed upon context, all parties involved have the same level of control over, what's going to happen, what is acceptable, how to stop things if
Right.
things go bad. Um, it requires a lot of self-insight and ability to communicate.
Mhm.
And
It's almost like trying to make a pact with a demon, for example. You're careful with that shit too.
you know, learning to set boundaries with spirits and even deities is something that I'm actually very glad. Like, a lot of what I've learned through kink and polyamory is also like, no, it's okay. I can say no to a god. I can say no to a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, focusing on consent even in non-corporeal relationship is a healthy approach, I think.
Yeah, I think it is too. How do you? So, what are the things that like to me? It seems like the things that people would want to be aware of if they're going to get into this kind of thing and have this these experiences in their life. It seems like having a healthy sense of self and knowing your own darkness is all, these are all like things that we should do, but I mean nobody does that, and especially not in their 20s. Like maybe a couple people here and there, there's exceptions to every rule, but like around people who are kind of new to that, are there like any hard and fast, like we talk about red flags, but are there any like hard and fast guidelines that you would recommend? Like I saw something called the Valley of the Shadow Dolls. It's an essay on polyamory and kink community, and it was something I read when years and years ago. But it's like an introduction that basically tells everybody, all the women in this swing club are not going to want to fuck you. Basically, it's a grow up a little bit and expect this to be not the Valley of the Dolls. And it's something that they gave to men when they were entering into this kink community, and it ended up being something that this Wiccan coven, I think, adopted, and I recommended it to people who were joining the OTO. It's like especially dudes who were. One guy asked for his horse. He went through Minerva. My partner at the time was the body master, so we got to hear all the crap. And this guy came in and asked. He said, "I know that I'm entitled to two horses, and I want one of our members at this lodge. I want her to be my horse." I'm like, "What the fuck is a horse thing?" And he read something in Crowley and he thought that every man in the OTO was given two women. And I'm like, dude, this is called the Valley of the Dolls. It's an introduction to polyamorous things. And by the way, everybody doesn't, and it's like, but is there something like that? Is there like a handy, like you mentioned, there's like Sacred Kink was a book that you had mentioned that,
Figure kink is a book. Like,
but is there like
it's
guidelines or how would you recommend somebody get prepared for this?
I would a go slow. I would look for like whether it's a magical partner or a kink partner, like, how do they communicate? Are they open to discussing, you know, things they've seen as their own failures? Are they willing to admit in ways that they've fucked up? Are they showing a genuine interest in your safety, your needs, your desires? Are they asking about things that may be traumatic and triggering for you? Uh, are they asking about your prior experience? If they seem very excited that you are brand new, run.
Right, if they start to drool while they're talking to
Yeah,
you.
like, it can be frustrating because a lot of the good DOMs are very actually leery about taking on newcomers
Right.
because they realize there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong, even unintentionally.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
when I moved here to Seattle, I got invited to that House of Mischief group, and the local kink scene was run by one dude here locally for a while. Not all of it, of course,
Yeah.
but he got into some consent issues. He got drunk and handsy is how it sort of looks from the outside, but it was a repeated stuff, and I mean the whole thing with alcohol, and this is true of occultism too. If booze is served at your events, chances are it's a big red flag, you know. But like anytime booze is blended in with all this shit, it gets weird. But like even in the consent in a community where consent is like at the door, let's define this and describe it and explain what it is, and it's up front. It's still it's complicated, and people who've been doing it for years can turn out to be someone you can't trust, and people are like in my opinion, this guy is just a boomer and doesn't fucking get it. You know, like he's so atrophied in his in his brain cells that he can't like it's like I don't think at a certain age some people are ever gonna get things like consent, and oh by the way, joking about that is traumatically triggering to some people, you know, and like people who are in their 60s, they just make these fucked up statements all the time about the dumbest shit. That's just and younger people are like, oh my god, you can't say that. No, boomer, no. You know, and it's like, but I just think that there's some people that I don't know, but I mean, even somebody who's got their face in it can miss the cues and misunderstand that they're crossing boundaries, or even willfully do it after years of being warned about it and told and told and told. So
So, like, one of my recommendations is usually like find a reputable kink group. Realize that even though it's reputable, even though it may have good guidelines, you'll never be, there is no such thing as being entirely safe, whether in
right.
kink, relationships, magic,
Going
whatever.
outside, getting out of bed in the morning.
There is always the risk that someone who appears to be really good, that you may have misread that. A lot of, you know, classic narcissists and serial abusers are very good at cultivating a persona of being a good and safe person.
Yeah, and
Um,
they get the apology script down too.
right?
Like, I recognize that I did everything wrong. I take responsibility for my actions. I am seeking treatment. I will not do that again. I am taking a break from all activities for the next periods while I figure out how to do this. And you know, and it's like these are all good things. That's all the right things to do. But when you hear him say it for the third time, you know, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And it's, you know, be careful. Like, it is risky stuff, especially combining magic and kink. It can
yeah.
be great. It can be extremely powerful and liberating. And I've seen people have some really great success with it.
Yeah, I've heard
I've
great stories.
also I've also seen a lot of really traumatic situations where people have been left scarred for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
It's it is to a certain extent, you know, playing with fire.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think open communication, honesty, trust. Yeah, I mean, it's all about trust and respect, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's do you respect the trust of your partner? Do you trust the respect of your partner? You
And
know,
one thing I recommend, especially if you're starting a new kink dynamic, you don't have a lot of experience, it's with someone you don't necessarily know all that well, make sure that you write down the things that you agree on and have both parties read it and see, yes, this is how we wanted. Doesn't mean that things can't evolve beyond that, but it should have a process for discussing changes to it.
mhm. Yeah, it's almost
Because
like It's almost like a software product. You have to have change
right?
management, you have to have releases, you have to have iterations.
Document,
Things
document,
change.
document.
Yeah.
Because like one of the typical things I see is that whole, well, I thought we had agreed this was okay.
Hmm. Yeah, and if it's
Yeah.
all verbal, it's really easy to misremember. So
Yep.
yeah, yeah, and it's such a mess. And human beings are fundamentally like we've got some issues, like all of us. None of us are perfect. And I think in the occult community and in I don't know about kink so much about how great it is, but we try to find ways to um take our dark sides and celebrate them and enjoy them and turn them into sources of not just pleasure but insight and wisdom, right? And that's like the whole transformation of lead into gold and
Yep.
finding the glory of existence in something that looks like crap, right? And that's beautiful. But I mean, it's just there's so many dangers to it. It's hard to I don't I really wanted to just I wanted to vent about the situation because I have
Yeah. Like,
feelings about it, but also I wanted to sort of address that because I don't think that I in my opinion that's not a healthy kink relationship, and I think that you've confirmed that that's absolutely not a healthy thing to do. And I feel like if this happened to one person in the occult, it's worth doing a conversation in public about with someone who knows what the fuck they're talking about.
I would say, I don't know, since she has made the statement she was not raped, I would say legally she might have been. Ethically, she was at the very least in a deeply abusive and
But can we talk about that?
unethical. Yeah.
Because so she has agency. She was a grown ass woman, 20 something, whatever,
Hmm.
30 something, whatever. I don't know how old she was, but she had years of experience. She was in her majority. And, as a man, I have to, I have problems I mean, I overcome them because I'm a decent human being, but I have this pre thing to just like, oh, it's just a woman, right? And I hate that that's my first response, but like, oh, she couldn't help it. The victimization of women that we project onto them. Oh, they're just a woman. They're not actually responsible for their actions or their decisions. She willfully entered into that relationship on purpose, and she's willfully said that she wasn't raped on purpose. And
So,
do I respect that agency, or do I say, oh well, she's actually psychologically damaged, but really she was hurt? Or do I say no, regardless
so,
of what I think she's saying this, I have to believe it.
so there's a reason why your therapist is not allowed to have sex with you, for instance. There's a reason why your teacher isn't allowed to have sex with you. Like, there's a certain power imbalance that is very psychologically intense. We don't have legislation around it with magic, but let's be honest, your initiator, your magical teacher, like that is a very powerful force. And there's a huge kind of power dynamic imbalance that makes it all very questionable. And just because someone is, you know, they may be of legal age, they may be smart, they may be successful, a lot of those people may still get drawn into really bad cults.
Yeah.
Like most, when you look at your typical cult victim, that is them.
It's somebody who's been
Because
deluded. They've been lied to, they've been deceived, and they've deceived themselves, but they've accepted something as true, and they're going to act as if it's true, even if it's not.
people have weak spots, they have trauma, they have insecurities,
Yeah.
and there are people that are going to actively be trying to exploit that to
Right.
gain consent through what I consider deeply unethical means, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
manipulation and deceit.
anyone who thinks that they are immune to manipulation and even like brainwashing,
You don't know how the brain works.
they are deluding themselves.
Right. All it takes
Yeah,
is one dark room, and you're
yeah,
you're starting the process.
right.
So yeah, it's all
It's
neurological, right? It is very much a chemical soup, and if you do A, you will get B. So
like, for instance, like the Manson family, they went around and killed people of their own free will.
right,
Does that mean Charles Manson is absolved of guilt?
right, exactly. So
Yeah,
he's guilty of
yeah,
inciting violence,
yeah,
but they're guilty of murder, right? So
yeah.
so in this
But
situation,
also,
like
you know,
I want to give her agency. I don't
yeah,
want to take away her agency or her right to decide what her experiences were and to state her truth as her truth, right? And even if I think it's obviously delusional or whatever, it's not my place to say that. She's at whatever stage she's at. But
yeah.
like my reaction to the whole thing is fuck these people. I don't want anything to do with them because like I don't know how to forgive the guy. Like even like I can imagine a redemption arc that he could go through, a process where he realizes what a crappy person he was and he does everything he can to never be that again. And now he's someone different and he's living out a life where he's trying to prove it to everybody. I can see a whole fucking movie about it, right? Great. But I don't trust it. It's a movie. It's fiction. In real life, I'm never going to trust the guy. I don't want to be around someone like that. I don't want to do any
I
magical anything with him. Just no. I mean, maybe he was a young guy who fucked up in his youth and he regrets it. I'm sorry, but I mean, what are we supposed to do about that? Are we supposed to welcome him in and be like, "Oh, sorry that you were lied about"? Oh, no, you actually weren't lied about. Sorry, it was so messed up. Sorry, you went into that.
so
What? How do you deal with that?
so I've dealt with people that have, shall we say, problematic pasts, and that I still now, much later, I trust them, I love them, I value them because I it takes time, and you see the work they're doing, you see their ability to start taking responsibility for actions, like not just the big bad, but like if they do something else, you see them try to take responsibility for that
Right.
without being called out on it.
See,
Like,
that's
yeah,
actually that's a really good point.
mhm,
That's something that I think going back to what people should look for if they're just starting out in this stuff
mhm,
is look for that personal accountability thing. Like look if the person that you're going to get into a relationship with you and even if it's not a kink any relationship, if that person is taking responsibility for their actions and has that sense of uh culpability, accountability,
yep,
for what they do, and they're actually holding themselves to account. That's a huge thing,
mhm.
and yeah, anyway, I think that was important. I didn't mean to derail you there.
Yeah, no, it's another case. This is another Seattle person that, you know, several years ago, pretty much got pushed out of the goth community for multiple allegations of sexual assault. And years later, I run into him outside of a club, and he just starts ranting at me and is like, "You were one of the people that just, you know, turned your back on me." And he just went, "You never heard my side of the story." And I was like, "I'm right here. Tell me your side of the story." And it was
Mhm.
just a 30-minute rant about how everybody was just out to get him.
Right.
There was no,
No
like,
remorse.
nothing.
Nothing
And I'm
like,
like,
oh, I don't know why all these women woke up
yeah,
not remembering anything that happened the night before and they're
mhm,
naked on my couch. Like
yeah.
there's no even credible explanation for the long stream of yeah,
And as
whatever.
you said, like, there's also the typical apology script that you mentioned earlier. It's short on details. It's like, it feels insincere.
It's rushed.
Yeah,
they're trying to get to the
it's
absolution phase without having to go through the paying the
it's
price, the punishment of for their sins, right? I hate to say it that way, but when you fuck up, you have to you get punished. You go to jail when you break the law. There's a
like,
time where you're
yeah,
separated from
there's,
society and you think about what you did.
yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, jail isn't a very good model for
No, it's not.
rehabilitation.
It's absolutely
I
not.
think I think there are better approaches. Like, I'm all for restorative and transformative justice in general, but it has to, you can't force someone to become a better person.
Right.
They have to show that initiative
They,
themselves.
they
And
have to
if they
grow.
don't, then I'm sorry, then they need their ability to cause further harm to be reduced.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's not just about like like I said, punishment. But what I
Yep.
mean by that is it feels like punishment when you fuck up and you have to pay the price. And
Consequences.
even if you're, yeah, consequences. If your
Yeah.
consequences are negative, from negative actions bring negative consequences, it's going to feel like punishment. And
Yeah.
jail sucks, but separating people from where they can harm others is important, and getting somebody where if they can't grow past their crap, then they can at least not hurt somebody else's growth.
Yep.
That I think is like, for me, that's my guideline. If I can't help something, I try not to hurt it. If I can't not hurt something, I remove myself from the situation. And that's just because I've got my own trauma situation and rage issues, and like for years and years I had a terrible temper, and drinking does not help, by the way. But yeah, it's like you learn that if you're a danger to yourself or others, you move yourself away from those people, and it's responsible, it's healthy, and it's safe for you to do that kind of thing. But it's just, I don't know where I was going with that, but it seemed like it's something that was important to say at the time. But
Yeah. No, I mean, none of
harm
us had,
none. Do
yeah,
what
like
thou wilt, but harm none.
yeah, well, you, you might end up harming people. Like,
Absolutely.
there's no way to go through life perfectly, ethically,
It's red in tooth
never
and claw.
harming anyone. Like, it doesn't happen. But
Right.
that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for doing it.
It,
You should, you know, another thing with this situation is like whether or not what he did was rape, it's pretty clear that what he did caused a lot of
harm.
trauma. It caused harm.
Yeah.
And if there's no understanding of the harm or why that was such a bad idea to do, then yeah.
Yeah, and if so what gets me about it is he still thinks he's innocent. He still is like, see, I didn't rape her. You fucking did, though. In my opinion, whatever. I'm not saying, I don't want to say anything that gets me in trouble with all this stuff. But the fact is in my opinion, that he did. She said no, and he did it anyway, and that's it. The end. That, to me, I'm sorry, it is a black. There are some things that are black and white. Everything's shades of gray, right? But it's not really. And the way I put it was to her when I was trying to explain to her that, like, I don't want anything to do with it going forward, but I understand that you're where you're at, whatever. Is he had a clear path to right action. In that situation, he had a clear path. Someone says, "No, I don't want you to do this." You have a clear path right there. No, I won't do it. He could have avoided this whole situation in that minute by just being a decent human being. There we go. So that's where I'm at with the whole thing. If in every situation that leads to trauma, somebody has a choice to make, and there's a moment where they decide to harm or not. And when you're emotional, you don't necessarily realize you're making that choice. But if you're all emotional, you shouldn't be making choices, and you shouldn't be getting that emotional to where you can't. I mean, separate yourself. I don't know. It's frustrating.
I don't know, like the thing is like it boils down to my own like horny mood and needing to do this and have this power was alluring enough that I was willing to do it regardless of the consequences to the other person. My own feel, or like in his case, like his own desire for that power overrode his concern for the
Right.
person involved.
And their
And
negotiated
yeah,
agreement slicked his ethical breaks so that he didn't have to fucking apply them, right? I mean, because he could hide behind that, he could get away with it.
yep.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess so I guess there is a redemption arc for people. I think that maybe they can get through it all. But one of my other friends that was aware of all this stuff and at the time when it was going down, he said to me, "Look, the clear situation here is that the three people that were involved in that are all fucked up. They're all messed up. They've got psychological damages, and everything they do is going to reflect that. And there's no part of it that I could touch without it getting sticky and getting on me. And even having this interview, I think it's more cathartic for me than anything else. But it's yeah, but I mean,
I
even
mean,
this is probably going to cause problems, and I'll have to put trigger warnings on the video because we talk about the R word, right? And
mhm.
it's like the whole thing is messed up, and it's all because he couldn't do the right thing, and it's like such a fail, such a fucking fail.
Yeah, it's let's be honest, like a lot of us who are into magic or into kink, into most subcultures, who are, kind of in our different ways, somewhat on the fringes of society, like, and I don't know, I think the idea of like a totally healthy, well-adjusted human being in this day and age is largely a myth
Oh yeah,
and a
Robert N. Wilson said,
fabrication. Yeah.
yep, said it.
Yeah,
He
like
said everybody is a walking wounded. We're all traumatized.
we all have our weaknesses. We all have our, if we want to use Jungian term, shadow, right?
Mhm.
Um, the the thing is like we are playing to a certain extent with fire, and we conjure demons, we have sex magic rituals, we do these like intense kink scenes. Like there's a lot of potential for like healing, growth, becoming a better person by
Mhm.
actually doing that in a good way. But yeah, like it can also, like, it leads to temptation. Like you don't go diving into your dark side without feeling some sort of temptation
Right. I think
about
a
it.
lot of us don't
Yeah.
want to accept that we're evil. Like we don't want to accept that there's any part of us that could possibly be that monster. Like I don't want to think that I could ever do what he did, but I don't know that. I've never been in that situation. I wouldn't put myself in that situation because I don't trust myself,
What
you
I
know?
what I keep telling people who kind of come to me with that is that I there are no good people.
Right. Not even me.
There are no
No.
there are no evil people. Like good or evil, right? Like ethical or non-ethical is not an inherent quality of who you are. And if we start thinking that we are inherently good, that's really dangerous,
Mhm.
because being a good person boils down to making good choices, and it never stops being about that.
Right.
When
And
you think that you are inherently a good person, then you start, like, all the not so great stuff you do,
you
you
think
start
that's good too.
rationalizing it. You start coming up with reason, because if that was a bad thing,
You
then
wouldn't
that,
do it.
yeah, then you have to re-examine your whole idea of yourself.
Right.
Like,
And that's
and
something we
that's,
have to
yeah,
do all the time. Like
yeah.
if we stop doing that, it's a sign of issues for sure. But hey, it's been about an hour. I think we probably lost like a lot of people along the way. But
No,
I really appreciate you doing this with me, and the community needs more information, more education about what a healthy kink can look like, and versus whatever the heck that was. So anyway, and I do super appreciate you giving me a chance to kind of vent about all that stuff in a healthy way.
okay.
So, all right, cool. I'm gonna stop recording.